Okay, so I have to admit my second year at CCF went pretty well. I actually kind of worked with some new people there. My first year as a skit writer, I worked with someone who I probably should have given some shout out to. I don't want to shout out to these people by name because, as you can see, there are times in talking about this where I am going to have to talk about the negative side of this. But the positive side was I remember working with somebody when I was a skit writer the first year who really did an awesome job. And then the following year, I worked with other people who had never really done something like that before, and I kind of had to, I wouldn't say that I had to train them or anything like that. I think they were doing the best they could. And a lot of times I think we kind of worked against each other, and a part of that I think was a lot of my fault. But I'm going to get into some of the problems that I had working in that. So anyway, and this, I was also doing double duty. I was writing skits for CCF, and there was also a certain adult education class that was going on in my church that they wanted me to write skits for too. So this first skit you're going to see wasn't the first one that I think we did that year. It really should have been. Really started with a bang, but when I watched it, I kind of ended up with a whimper. Okay, so basically, if you happen to find this video while scrolling, I'm Mark Rollins. These are skits I wrote 25 to 30 years ago.
That's him. Give him the
and they appear on a channel known as YouTube, or a YouTube site known as CCF 90s Skits Nostalgia. You can go there if you want to watch this without my commentary.
Pardon me, but
there's going to be a lot of evangelical cringe going on here, and this one has a lot of it. I'll go ahead and tell you that much.
Why, yes.
But only when my and I'm planning on doing an episode based on like all these things at the end of the month.
Yep. How you doing,
in
Mr.
April,
Roland?
or
You
in
got
May
it?
actually.
I got it.
So as you can, I don't know if you can tell, but this is a sketch based on Mission Impossible. Now, this sketch first appeared in 1996.
Your mission, should you choose to
The
accept
first
it,
Tom
is
Cruise
to
Mission Impossible
sabotage
movie
the
had
enemy
just
stronghold of
hit
Fort
theaters at that
Newman
time,
and
so
Cruise
we're
will
looking at
break
the fall
in and plant a
afterwards,
bomb in the
or the
heart of the
fallout, as it
enemy,
were. Not the
while
fallout
Mr.
like Mission
Roland will
Impossible
remain
fallout, but
outside as a monitor.
you get it, as it were.
I realize that no one who has
So,
undertaken this mission has
the
ever
basic
returned,
premise of this thing
which
is
is
like it
why
just
your
turns
task force
Christians
must
into these like
faithfully
secret
follow the
agents,
plan and do all that it
and
commands.
who have to use
If you
faith
try
in
to
order
do
to
it your
succeed in
way,
their
then the
missions.
senator will disavow
And I have
any
to
of
admit,
your actions. This
it's a pretty
message will
weak setup,
self-destruct
but
in
Mission
10
Impossible is
seconds.
pretty popular, and
10.
Oh no!
the title of
It's going to
that
explode.
particular sketch was called Mission Impossible. So, yeah, naturally we had to rip off
Pause
that.
button.
I do like the fact that there's this pause button on this thing. Now, these are computer graphics created by this guy who did a really good job. I really like how this looks. I mean, people were really surprised that we could do stuff like this. But, yeah, I didn't think that this stuff was kind of possible. And hey, yeah, that was quick. But now we get into the skit, meat of the skit proper. Oh gosh, how did that get there? Okay, now we're going to start out with the Mission Impossible theme. Sorry about that. Yeah, see, now they're doing that thing. Okay, as you can see, we have the two secret agents, and we have a guy in a chair here who's supposed to be clearly in another
Roland,
place.
Come in.
Yeah.
Is that you?
Boy,
Quit that annoying
you know, in retrospect,
sound. It's driving me crazy.
I have to admit, like,
What's the matter?
maybe I haven't talked about
There's
this
a
before,
field
but
up ahead.
there's times where I am,
Okay, so mine.
well, when it's like I was never allowed to do everything I wanted with
Contain the map.
sketches. There were certain things, there were certain times
All
I'd
the
turn
plans
into a
exactly.
skit, and they'd say, we like it, we need you to change
Don't
everything because
get
we
off the
don't
path.
want to this, or we think this thing has a bad connotation or whatever. And here's the
Okay,
thing.
we're at the
This
door, and
sketch
it's
involves
wide open. Come
two
on, let's
Christians
go
whose
in. What are we
mission
waiting for?
is to
Don't trust your
destroy
eyes.
something.
Cruise?
And I don't know, I don't really think that's, and I was always surprised I never got a call back saying like, hey, could you make their
You're
mission
right,
something
sir.
else?
It's a trap.
But I
What do we
couldn't think of
do?
anything else to
Okay.
do, really. I like the idea of sabotage.
Get out your Phillips screwdriver.
I don't know. And for some reason, just like,
Yeah, but
Yeah, I know.
what is that?
strange.
You just
strange.
have to trust me on
Yeah, I
that.
used to carry around a briefcase a lot. I wonder if
Take
that
your
was the
Phillips
briefcase I
screwdriver.
used to carry around.
Put it on the floor
Yeah, who
in
knows?
front of the doorway.
Anyway, so, and it's also strange because,
You're right again, sir. It was
oh
a trap.
boy, that was a terrible joke.
That was the last
Can't believe
one.
I can't
All
believe
right,
I wrote that.
Go in.
Anyway, so
and get out of there.
Okay, so it's strange because
Gladly.
if you've ever watched the show Mission Impossible, the television show and its movie series are incredibly different. The show was really about a group of people who worked together, often to do some sort of infiltration or something like that. But the problem is the movies are all about Tom Cruise
Right, double agent
being like an
Hi.
American James
Mr.
Bond.
Nolan has been successfully captured.
And that's crazy. It's crazy that how that has changed. So I modeled this after the Mission Impossible television show, where you have the group of people working together. Of course, there are some things that they share in common. For example, the fake faces. That happens a lot, and you'll see that later in this thing. So, okay. Now there's this, I don't know, when we did the sketch, I think this bad guy only had like one voice actor, one actor, and then we got two, and yet, and so basically the other actor behind him is just repeating the lines. It's just kind of, I mean, why is that person even there? Anyway. Oh, by the way, that's me.
While we were going here, he said, hey, look,
Because
and I looked, and
that's
he
just,
was gone.
yeah, that's just me, because oftentimes I would end up in these sketches. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
This is pretty campy. It's meant to be campy, so it's meant to make fun of all the stuff that you see in these espionage movies, and like James Bond and stuff like that. I mean, like this idea that they're talking about,
know what to do. Do you?
it's like how they just don't kill the good guys right away. They always try and think of some slow-moving torture device. I actually think it's still out from Austin Powers, which had been released that year or so.
I'll be in the next
Hey,
room.
not that I don't think I even saw Austin Powers that year. I think I watched it years later when it came out.
And Roland just
Anyway.
left us here.
So yeah.
Roland, how could you? Roland
It's kind of funny,
would
these
never
people
leave
are
us,
named like
and we did the
Newman and
best we
Cruz.
could.
I actually think
what
that's their real
matters.
last names. If they are, it's kind of like being like the color of money or something like that. Newman and Cruz. Alright. Now, of course, here's the big old
Hey, where's
twist.
he going? I don't know, but this could be our chance
Do
to
I actually
escape.
do that joke where I do that thing? I think I do. Oh yeah, I do that.
Roland,
Or something.
it is you.
Of course.
You were with us all along.
It's all part of the plan. Let's get out of here.
But wait, we
Oh,
don't
yeah,
have the bomb.
Okay, this gag I always thought was pretty funny.
Tape.
The fact they used the kind of the self-destruct message as sort of a bomb at the end of this thing. I don't know. I always like it when
Tell you what.
comedy sketches go full circle. I guess this is one of them.
Play it.
So who knows?
And run in slow motion. It should be.
Yeah, we gotta of course do the convention of running in slow motion as explosion.
6, 5,
Of course, we can't do this. Oh, by the way, the guy who's reading this thing,
2,
there was like a radio station our church did. This was like the main announcer on it. So yeah. And then of course, do we have an explosion effect? I guess we kind of do. Oh yeah. Well, that was really... Oh, people actually applauded for that? That must have looked better on the stage.
The audience has to
Real shame.
believe in faith that that was a real explosion.
Yeah, they really
Otherwise,
do,
somebody
don't
would
they?
get hurt.
Yeah.
Roland, will you forgive me?
Anyway,
Should've had more
so this
faith
is kind of
in
a
you.
crazy message about how
Newman,
kind of,
I forgive you.
hey, we call
Just
people
remember,
missionaries and they're on missions, so we might as well just
trust
put them on a spy
faith
mission.
in the master plan.
Yeah, I'm not really too
Impossible.
pleased with this one, but
Became possible.
well.
It
Yeah.
wasn't impossible. It was impossible.
Oh gosh, boy, we're really. But was it Kim possible?
Good job.
Okay, for the most part, I've pretty much forgotten about this particular skit because, yeah, I can't believe. I think I said this in my commentary. I can't believe I wrote that really poor trap joke. Jeez. Not my best work, but hey, like Johnny Carson once said, they can't all be gems. Dang, that Carson guy really influenced me. Okay, one thing I noticed about this skit is something I might have mentioned before, at least in the commentary, that the goal of the good guys of the sketch is to do something destructive, to destroy an enemy fortress or base or something like that. And I have to admit that most 60s espionage shows, there's very clear distinctions between the good guys and bad guys, and there's no subtlety with that. I really feel like we don't do this now, as you know, when we do spy shows, usually there's a lot of moral ambiguity as far as what they do. And I have to say that, yeah, I think Now, this is where I'm going to start to get into some things about being a Christian propaganda artist, is that not only did most of the jokes not really land in that Mission Impossible sketch, but it shows the problem that a lot of Christians have, is they think they're the good guys. And in most cases, they do good deeds, but there is this really intolerant side to Christianity that you will encounter if you ever get into a disagreement with them, which you can very easily do. So yeah, the Mission Impossible sketch is propaganda, just like a lot of 50s and 60s spy films were very pro-American McCarthyism. I'll let you do searches for that type of history, and because I don't really want to get into that, what that all means. But anyway, there's this one sketch that is also propaganda. Hey, maybe they all are. Some are just fun, but some they do have a very specific message, and they want you to know it. And yeah, this is Sock World. Okay, I'm going to make the intro really quick. Basically, I'm Mark Owens. These are a sketch I wrote 25 or 30 years ago for a college-age group. And these skits are videotaped. They're on a YouTube channel known as CCF 90s Skits Nostalgia. Go there if you want to watch it without my commentary. There's a lot of evangelical cringe and a lot going on here, and I'm going to explain. This is one of those ideas I had for a sketch that when I had it, back when I was working at Walmart, while I was working and thinking about nothing but, say, work, I just had this brilliant idea of how to sort of do this idea of a sketch dealing with relationships. I think I did another sketch where I was talking about how a lot of times in the Christian community, doing relationships is about this weird triangle illustration. You find God, and then He helps lead you to your lifelong partner. And this one I decided to use socks as an example. And once I had the idea of just using sock puppets, I swear everything fell into place. And pretty much everything else is just a bunch of sock jokes. And even watching this, I feel like I'm watching the Muppet Show or something like that. A lot of people told me that this thing almost had a Muppet influence. I will not deny that. I love the Muppets until the day I die, so I'm going to say that. Oh, by the way, the guy who's doing the extras in the background, the sock dances, was doing a really good job. He's just totally selling the fact that this is a sock singles bar. I remember, I had some issues working with the props person on this, and most of this I think is my fault, because I don't think I should have been so hard on him. Remember, he made a sign that said, sock hop, and then we told him not to do that because there was, a line here that says it's no sock hop, so we had to redo the sign so it says sock singles bar. And I kind of wish that hadn't happened. When you're writing these things, sometimes the right hand doesn't talk to the left, and sometimes you just gotta just say, oh, who cares about that? Just do it. And so there's some awkward editing in this thing, but that's supposed to be Peter's place, is what that's supposed to say. And it looks like we left on the sock singles bar. And
Hey, you look like you just went through a ringer.
Anyway, so here's the issue of this. This sketch could easily be reinterpreted as mismatched socks. So
watching the Red Sox White Sox on TV.
We're not supposed to interpret that as this is not an anti-miseducation sketch. Okay, I think what they're trying to say is that the mismatch is in
I went to a singles bar tonight.
Again, this is based on the idea that God has a match for everybody, and if you mismatch them, it's like wearing mismatched socks. That's the illustration that we're meant to convey with this.
Look at me.
And
I'm still single.
For the most part, it didn't go.
One day he will find me.
I really felt like this one really worked and clicked with the audience that it was going for, which is, of course, evangelical Christians and stuff. And the speaker, Pastor Phil, really was able to he really loved the fact at this point. I love this idea to him, and I just love the shape he makes of this. Muppets were always good like that. Like Kermit's little scowl face was always the thing here. Now, this is where we get to this kind of thing where, okay, this character here in the chair, I guess is supposed to be God, and so he's matching the socks here.
I got the perfect
Now, I have a funny story that happened after the day after I wrote this sketch.
Of my dreams.
Someone told me that at
Looks
the
like
end,
you're my match.
there's a scene where this guy tries on the
Should've known it would
socks,
be you.
and then he does this thing where he rubs his feet together, and some people thought that was almost pornographic. That's hysterical. Okay, I think I mentioned in the sitcom sketch, maybe in the commentary or after I did this in the formal episode, that the church I went to had this kind of anti-dating point of view. It's not totally anti-dating, but essentially there's this illustration they use, like, here's God, here's you, here's your mate, and as you come together to find God, you find each other. This was used constantly. This is, I guess, a thought-terminating cliche because it was used a lot. I mean, most of the time. This is what happens with a lot of groups that tend to go full, I don't know how to say it, they tend to go really hard with their doctrine as they eventually they go with the illustrations of the doctrine rather than the doctrine themselves. Anyway, so I think that we really tried to live by that metaphor at LFF. Yeah. And of course, one of the worst parts about living by that is this idea of gender roles. This idea that males are encouraged to initiate relationships, but the women are meant to be patient. So males are like Odysseus and women are like Penelope. I realize not a lot of people know the story of the Odyssey because that Christopher Nolan film hasn't come out yet, but you'll pretty much know this. I suppose it's a fairy tale model of relationships, but Odysseus and Penelope is lovely as a model of like how she waited for him all those years, like 20 years while he was off to war or something like that. It's not really like that. It's not a fairy tale. This whole thing about waiting and waiting and waiting is just, it's really grating. This is something I tried to focus on in that whole romantic situation comedy sketch. And as I recall, Odysseus was not faithful to his wife while she was waiting for him, let me tell you. Anyway, there's just something to this waiting and waiting and waiting that just really wore someone down on both genders, probably felt this. And while I don't promote promiscuity, I don't really think we live in a society that really encourages it. But I think if we're looking for a good relationship, I don't think Christianity really has the monopoly on the right way to do it. In fact, I think there are some things that are a bit questionable. Now, I'm definitely not certain that if we are made for one another, like as if like, I don't know, if we got some sort of weird destiny thing going on with who we're meant to spend the rest of our life with. There are times where I have to submit my wife and I work together pretty well. And there are times in relationships you realize how imperfect you can be and you just kind of have to work with what you've got. But yeah, I think I address this better in another sketch. But this next skit addresses something I'd really like to address, and that is a major problem with Christianity today. Okay, so if you found this video while you're scrolling, name's Mark Rollins, about 30 years ago. I wrote these skits for a college age group. The sketches were videotaped. They're posted on YouTube. On
Can I help you?
a site, a channel known as CCF 90s Skits Nostalgia. You can go there and watch this without the commentary if you like.
I get a lot of that.
And again, I warn you, there's a lot of evangelical stuff going on here. Not to mention some serious cringe. And I have to say, of all the sketches I'm going to talk about, this one might be one of the cringiest.
I see you've been through this before.
And I'm going to do a full report, or at least an episode on my time writing these sketches.
You see, I'm not really
and
sure.
I really have to say that a lot of the things that are in this sketch
Okay. But I think
you see in a lot of Christian media these days. And there has been a push for Christian media ever since the God's Not Dead film, and I have to say, there's no way that this sketch influenced God's Not Dead, but honestly, I think if you watch this after God's Not Dead, you might say that God's Not Dead influenced this sketch, because there is something very similar in this thing, but I'll get to that when I get to that. I will have to say that this skit was not supposed to happen this way. Originally, this is hard to explain, but
You're my
every
advice,
year
advice
at
me or
CCF,
something,
they do
please.
something called
Okay,
the
here's my
Big
advice.
Weekend. It was formerly called
Find what
Heartbeat
makes you happy
Retreat.
and do it. Look at me, for
But that's when we
I've
really
been in
start
this
to
profession
push,
for
or
about
that's
10
when
years now. And
they,
in 2 years,
not part of
I'm
this
gonna
group
be at the
anymore,
top.
really
And when I
started
get
to
to the
push
top,
this whole thing about
then I'll
getting
be happy.
people to accept Jesus
You
as
know,
their Lord and
I think
Savior.
that sounds like a good bit of
So
advice.
naturally, when it comes to
So why don't
doing
you
the
try it?
skit before the message for the night, they really want it to
I
be
gotta get
hard
lots of
hitting.
class.
Like they really want
Glad I could've
people
been
to know,
service.
like, you really need a
Feel
Savior,
free to stop by
and
anytime. I'm always
that's
available.
kind of the message that's sort of happening here. And in this case,
morning,
this
class.
one is
Today we're
really,
gonna
really
continue our
pushing it
discussion
hard,
on
and
the
this
Bible.
one is really, really
If you remember
dark.
yesterday, we were discussing
Remember I
the
said there
Israelites.
was kind of a God's
How
Not
they
Dead
passed
sort
their
of thing
stories
going on
down
here? If
through the
you've
years.
ever watched that film,
Their
and I
stories
don't
changed
recommend
a
you
lot,
do,
and now they are
the first in that
completely
series was
impossible to
about
believe.
a student who went
I don't
against
believe
his
any of
teacher
this.
because his
What do you
teacher
think?
wanted the students to write
What did you say?
God's Not Dead on a piece
In
of
fact,
paper
many scientists claim
and
that the
basically like
presuppposed
sign it like a
Adam and
contract,
Eve
and the
are
one student says
actually
like, hey, I'm not doing that,
precursors
and then they
to
sort of got
evolution.
into a little bit of battle, and then there's
About
like
the Bible.
12 other
These
subplots
kids
going through this film.
Who
In this
cares?
case,
Like,
it's
that's gonna
focused
give
on
us
one
any hope in
character
our lives
here,
anyway.
and
Okay.
but as you can see, this professor here could be like Kevin Sorbo from that film, I
mean,
swear, because he's all
What
like,
can you
hey,
expect?
God's not real, this all stuff is just history
I found
that's
out
just
my
been
parents were
passed
getting
on and
divorced.
passed on poorly and stuff like that, and
And
I
my
just
brother
kind of
ran
like,
away
oh,
from home.
this is kind of crazy. And honestly, I
I'm
feel
sorry, I shouldn't be dumping all this on you.
very
Hey,
bad
listen, do you
because
want to talk after class?
here's the thing.
Yeah, I guess so.
This kind of happened to me. That is, several things in my life were
Well,
falling
we're out of time for
apart at the
today's
time I
class.
was
Tomorrow we will
had
be
just begun
discussing
going to
Jesus,
this
the great
church here,
human teacher.
and I had a relationship that didn't
Glad
go
to
very
talk
well and ended very badly, and so I was very miserable. So I really embraced
So Dolores.
this kind of thing that
it's like I
is
told
happening
you.
here.
It's like everything
So
in my life is really
when
important.
Dolores, the main
just
character of the
falling
sketch,
apart
is
around
talking
me.
to Sarah here,
I know how you
Sarah
feel.
has apparently had a very similar experience to Dolores,
Right, and what did you do?
and she's sort of helping out
Give my
as
heart to
good as she
Jesus.
can and
Oh
evangelizing
no,
to her.
please, don't even start
And
with me about that stuff.
I
didn't
don't
you
know.
was
There's
them.
something about this sketch
I don't want
that's
to hear anything about
that
the Bible stuff.
I
Did you
do
hear what our
like
teacher
because
talked
I
about?
feel
It's
like a lot of
nothing.
people when they go to
Dolores, I know
college,
you don't want to hear
they
this,
have
but
this kind
I'm
of
for you
existential
because I planned
crisis,
for your
and
life. I remember when I was
Christian
your age, my
groups,
life was miserable.
college Christian groups, try and come in and sweep them up and try and say like,
Jesus.
hey, everything's okay,
Everything I
just
had,
come with us
he
and
never left me
follow
empty-handed.
Jesus, and
And
you're
when
going to
I
live the
gave him
best
my
life you
He
can.
gave me his.
And
Wow.
it's not totally
Sounds like you
untrue.
went
I
down
mean,
your
hey, when you
personal
go to these
happiness.
Christian groups, you meet a lot of great friends,
You know, I
and
actually
you
thought
have
about
a,
going to church
you have a great
like
time.
once or twice this year just to
But I
see
have
what
to
it was all
admit,
about.
when I get to the episode on here,
actually, my boyfriend wouldn't
I'm
let
gonna
me
say
go.
how there's a burnout that happens here.
You know, we'll be driving along in
And
the car, and
it's kind of
if there's even
sad
a
and
church
stuff
out the
like
window,
that.
if I look
And it's
at
something
it,
that
they'll always tell
isn't
me, don't
addressed
even
in this
look at it.
sketch.
Don't even think about it.
Or it isn't addressed in the skit, and really
You know, we have
should
a great
be.
relationship.
And I think I'm going to
We
address
really
it in
love
the
each
episode
other, and
eventually when I write it.
I could never leave him.
This was definitely a good exercise
Would you
as
like to
far
talk
as
about
like
this
trying to
more?
get a character to really get out what they're saying. But the problem is,
Yeah,
I
but
think the
I
thing
just
that I
can't
don't
talk
really
about it
like about
anymore
this
right now.
sketch is that
How about I stop by your room later
the issue with
tonight?
her
Around
parents'
8:30?
divorce and her brother running away never really got resolved or never
That'd be
really got
great where you live.
anything. And
live
that's
in
not
Brighton,
really the
231.
point of this
Great,
sketch.
I'll see
The
you
point
then.
of this sketch is really to point out a problem and that Jesus is the solution, which is pretty much the point of pretty much any Christian sketch if you've ever watched any Christian-oriented thing here. This gal is playing Dolores is just acting her heart out, though. I will give you that. And yeah. Oh yeah, I think I mentioned something here. This sketch almost didn't happen like this because I originally submitted a sketch to the CCF team, which featured this company called Eternal Security Incorporated, and it was about how people wanted Christianity, but they could pick and choose their program of Christianity, and it featured characters who were whipping out pages of the Bible. And here's the thing, that script was approved, and we were going to do that sketch. And then, I don't know, I was just kind of walking somewhere, and then
Doug, what's up?
someone from the CCF team just goes like, oh, by the way, we
you
can't do
crying?
that skit. And to me, that's pretty terrible. I mean, I think I mentioned before, but I'm on the spectrum here, and when you get a plan and when somebody just yanks the rug underneath that plan, that is the worst. It really is bad. So I had to kind of come up with this thing, just kind of like,
Well, come on, let's
you know, and I don't know. I can't even remember if this idea was approved, but I remember just having this idea, and I went with it.
Sarah would understand.
And I actually think they loved this idea a whole lot more, and I loved it a whole lot more.
Today.
So sometimes that actually
really
works.
understands.
Sometimes
She really
when your
does.
plans fail and you have to come up with
She's
one,
gonna come over tonight.
just sometimes that does work. Now, I will have to say
really
that
think we
doesn't
should
always
meet her.
work. There are times in which, like, you do something and then it gets changed, but that whole thing that you had originally was actually a really good idea. And honestly, I never worked out that Eternal Security
No way. Hey,
Incorporated
we've already
idea.
discussed
I think it
this,
was a really
and
good
we're
one.
not gonna do it.
But hey,
So don't even think
oh man,
about
by
it.
the way, this boyfriend here is just really a
Besides, if we were
abusive
at
little
church, could we do
scoundrel. Jeez.
Stop!
Ugh, my guy.
this? Head on.
I don't know.
Actually, I think this guy is more
I'm
like me
sorry.
than
I'm
this
looking for
girl
Brother
is in this
Dolores.
thing. So, anyway, so we get the meeting between
Sarah, this is my boyfriend Bobby.
Dolores and
Hi, Bobby. This is Sarah.
Sarah, and
So it's the infamous
and then-
Sarah.
whoever this
I hear you're a
boyfriend's name
Christian.
is. I don't remember. I think
So
it's
am I.
Bobby.
Really?
I don't remember
Yep.
the name I gave him. This actor was
Yeah, I
always good to
prayed
work
prayer.
with. I
I'm
was
going to
always really glad when we got him.
Bobby, I had no idea
So-
you were a Christian.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to go to church.
But hey, I mean, we brought the idea of some, because there are guys like
That's
this
okay
who
for some
act like
people,
jerks
But
and say
I
they're
just- I just
Christian.
don't like it.
And now we know that
I think it's a
in
waste
a
of
MAGA
time.
age, we know that this exists
And what am I supposed to say to
terribly.
the guys? Yeah.
and
Well,
it's even worse now.
sorry guys,
so,
I can't
ugh.
go partying tonight because I gotta stay up.
Okay, this
and do
mocking
my
tone is kind of
homework,
like,
and then I'm gonna
man,
go to
that's
church
just-
tomorrow. Yeah, I think
okay,
they
that's a
think
little bit too
real
much.
Cool.
It's a bit over the
I
top.
don't think,
In fact, this
I'm
whole
ready
thing is
for
a bit
this
over the
surrender
top,
my
but
life
hey,
thing.
for reasons
Besides,
here.
if Jesus loves me, he'll see through that.
Bobby, that's not what the Bible says. I know when
Anyway,
I
so,
totally surrender my
but I
life to
do
Jesus
kind
and
of-
made him my Lord.
Yeah,
Here's
I
the
know,
thing.
okay?
I actually do
Listen, I've heard it,
kind of like
numerous
this
times, and I'm
ending
not gonna
as
hear it
far as
again.
like
especially from
um,
you. You don't
where-
even know me.
Bobby essentially is going to do this thing where he's
Who do you
just
think
gonna
you are? Come on, Dolores, let's go.
okay,
let
he's
go.
gonna drag
Go
her out
somewhere
here,
else.
Bobby,
and then she's kind of surrounded by all these other
Forget about the
voices,
Bible.
like this
It's all a bunch of
teacher
lies.
here,
Come on, Dolores.
and then this
just do whatever
advisor who
makes
I
you
haven't
happy.
mentioned much
I
because,
want to be happy. But how do I know
and I
what's
really
right?
just, geez, how do I know what's right? Then she gestures.
I just want to do what's right.
She gestures to the cross. Now, okay, good. We actually got that in the shot. I'll let you decide how good that is. Okay, the thing with the Dolores Fishburne sketch, I have to admit, is it really reminds me of my own life. That is, before I kind of settled down at the church. And here's the thing. This is something that, then this is something that happened to me, and I think this happens to a lot of kids when they get to college. And I do say kids because, I mean, technically they're adults, but I mean, to me, when you're 50, people who are in college, I just feel like are still kids. And so when people from high school, they go to college, they kind of have this existential crisis because you get that you're in an institution where you have to decide what you're going to be for the rest of your life. And that can be very scary because what if you make the wrong choice? And it's one thing when you're young and the world is ahead of you, like when you're in college and you don't have to think about certain things. But as you go deeper, you realize how much regret you could accrue upon yourself. And this is kind of, this is what this is like. And these are things I understand that I'm older, and when I was in college, I had these definite fears. This idea that you can't fit in, that the world is a horrible place and you're just going to be just shoved out in it someday. You have to get a job, and it's very realistic horror that I really thought I embraced with this skit. A skit that was never intended to be this skit. And I think I go into a commentary as far as what I originally thought I wanted to do for this particular thing. So Christian college groups, they love to create this kind of disease where it's like, you got to have a plan for your life. You've got to have God in your life. And they, of course, they say like, you got to have God in your life to have the best life. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. And they sell the cure, like to get a big dose of God with their treatment plan, which involves leading you to the Lord, doing the sinner's prayer, and then a lot of contribution to the church afterwards. This is the fine print for you. Now, I have to admit, even though the skit is slightly propaganda, I do kind of like the ending of this. I like this idea that the main character doesn't just tell them an answer. They show them the answer. This is something that a lot of Christian artists or the Christian movies that I watch and stuff like that, they just don't understand that there's a show not tell aspect that you have to do in your thing. You can't just tell people answers. Otherwise it just becomes a sermon. But the main character just shows them the cross. I really like that idea. I still believe in Jesus, and I still believe that, yes, you are required to suffer in this world, and you are required to suffer yourself so others can live a better life. I think there's something to that. That can be perverted, and a lot of times the church sort of says like, okay, now you suffer so we, the church, can benefit. And I think there's something really to that. So yeah. So in other words, I kind of like and hate the message of this thing, really. I'm a little bit mixed on it. So there was another skit I did, which also you could call propaganda, but it has a definite moral. Let's watch. Okay, gonna get right to it. These are sketches I wrote like 25, 30 years ago when I wrote for a college-age Christian group. You can find them on YouTube site known as CCF 90 Skits Nostalgic if you want to watch out on my commentary. There's a lot of evangelical cringe here, but honestly, not too much in this one. I actually kind of like this one. If you haven't guessed, it's based on Forrest Gump. This one is called Forrest Grump, where Forrest Gump meets his long-lost brother, Forrest Grump. And yeah, if they are brothers, how come they have the same? How come they don't have the same last name, but rather the same first name? Well, my answer to that is Forrest Gump's mom got around, so that wouldn't surprise me, actually. But
my mom used to say that too.
I really like the idea behind the sketch, and the reason why I like the idea behind the sketch is even if you take it out of the whole Christian idea of having the right attitude or something, this sketch could work on Saturday Night Live or Mad TV, and I think that's kind of the reason why I like about it. Also, the guy who's doing Forrest Gump here is doing a pretty good job, and I like the guy who's playing Forrest Grump. He's doing a good job of just being kind of angry at everything, and yeah. So, and also it really makes fun of Forrest Gump and how that if you've watched Forrest Gump now, it's just really strange to see this guy just sort of stumble into history and just do these things just unintentionally, and sometimes and now I feel like that's been done to death, and so it's sort of crazy. So yeah. So here's kind of the funny thing about this thing. We have a few guest characters here from history.
I'm looking for the bus to the Olympics trial.
For example, this guy here is supposed to play an Olympic runner. And here's the thing. The ironic thing is this guy in real life, the actor playing Carl Lewis, actually was an Olympic runner. Yeah, he ran representing St. Vincent, I believe.
No, I never tried out for Olympic running.
So yeah, that's kind of a funny thing here. So yeah, he's portraying Carl Lewis, and I have to admit, a lot of people might not know who Carl Lewis is. If you don't, I get it.
You're Forrest Gump.
But yeah.
My name is
Lewis. Carl Lewis. So yeah. So it looks like most people in the audience knew who that was. But I remember as I was writing the sketch, I presented it to the people that helped me present the sketch, and one of them suggested I change this guy's name to Jesse Owens.
Wait a minute. There's my bus.
And I couldn't believe it when I heard that, because I just went like, okay, do you not know the time period of this? Because I kind of went like, okay, Forrest Gump is obviously a baby boomer. It obviously takes place after World War II. Jesse Owens made his big feat in the 30s Olympic Games. And I felt like, okay, I probably shouldn't. Here's the thing. There's no way I can really. I understand that people don't really know their history very well, and sometimes things get mixed up. But I just went like, I just kind of went like, how did that even get suggested? And I feel bad for even. I shouldn't. You know what?
The name's
I shouldn't do that. I mean,
Bruce Springsteen.
I forget I said anything here.
My name
But I
is
like the
Forrest.
guy's
Gump.
portrayal of Bruce
This is
Springsteen.
my
And oh my
hometown,
gosh,
Mr.
thank
Springsteen.
God we have that. Honestly, I thought a better Bruce Springsteen
like the sound of
jokes
that.
here. The fact that
So
he
what you're saying
didn't
is
mention Born to
he was
Run,
born in
I
the
think is
USA.
stupid. Because
I
honestly,
like that
I
sound
just
a lot
talked
better.
about how Forrest Gump
This
was
is giving me some
running.
great
And I
ideas
just
for
thought,
some
why didn't I use
What was
that?
your name
Because
again?
I think that was his
Gump.
biggest hit.
That's right.
His earliest
You're the
hit was
guy who
called
wanted
Born to
the
Run, right?
championship. You know,
But,
I really admire you.
Oh yeah, and then of course here's the thing.
I heard you
Every
had
time he
this
meets one of these guys that
breaking
becomes
the
a
ping pong
celebrity in the
champion of the
future,
world.
they always
I
say,
admire your
always
attitude.
talk about how
Here's
much
my
they
bus.
admire
I gotta go.
Forrest Gump. Yeah, and here he is singing "Born in the USA." And I think I mentioned the song "My Hometown" and stuff like that, or I did some allusion to that. I just thought that was pretty funny. They got them there. So look at that. Forrest Gump sort of does cut, and he actually cuts it out there.
Everybody's heard of you.
Yeah, everybody's heard of you. And I kind of like this thing. I kind of like this idea that Forrest Gump is just is always focusing on the negative and always focusing on those that are doing better than him and just wondering when is he going to get his turn. There's something real about that, and I don't think that should be downplayed.
I don't know, sir.
Yeah,
Why do you
so.
ask?
Well, I'm trying to start a major computer corporation.
And this guy here, he's
My
trying to
name's
get to Seattle.
William Gates.
William
I'm
Gates.
Forrest.
He's Bill Gates. Oh yeah, this is pretty hysterical. And I think what's really even
That rings a
funnier
bell.
here is that
Aren't you the guy who
Forrest,
forged Bubba Gump for
William
the big
Gates is
company?
looking for a partner. He
Hey, your
wants
story
to
really
get
inspired
Forrest
me.
Gump
I mean,
as his
didn't you really
partner,
cash in after that
and
one
he
big hurricane?
refuses. So in a way,
There were
it's
bad
sort of like
circumstances stop you.
he's not taking
I
it.
need that
Forrest
attitude
Gump is
to
not
conquer
taking
the
the
computer
opportunity
world.
that he really
What
should. I actually think there's
What'd you do
something really
before you were
good to be
business
said
man?
about that.
Just
And not to get
how it
overly
goes,
preachy or overly praising him myself. I just think that's just a good idea here.
I'll call my new
There's some really good.
Man,
I
you
guess
are
there are
really
some really good
amazing.
ideas in
Hey,
this.
how would you like to
I
be
feel
my
like I could
partner?
actually rate this one today, and feel still proud of it.
Might be more qualified.
But yeah, look at Forrest. He's so humble. He suggests his brother. Just kind of goes, yeah, maybe he'd be the
Nice to
good
meet you,
partner.
Bo. Why, there's my bus.
Yeah, and of course, yeah, we got the there's my bus in case the celebrities or the
Maybe he'll succeed.
future guys need to live. Oh, Sherman's Home Group. Yeah, that's a. I'm not gonna even bother mentioning what that's supposed to be a reference to, but I remember the guy who's in charge of CCF didn't like that.
Understand it.
Um,
Times smarter than you.
yeah, and this is where it gets kind of interesting.
Boss,
Man,
I
I may be stupid.
but I know
Yeah,
what an
yeah, I
attitude
know.
is.
Very simple message. Okay, we'll have to say that Forrest Gump is a story that feels like it can only be told in America. If you've watched this film, then you know how it shows a man of low intelligence interacting with various big points in American history. Instead of some smart guy, say, going in and implementing and creating changes, it's just some guy who's just some feather in the wind, and or is it a random plan, or maybe a little bit of both? Anyway, that's a big takeaway from Forrest Gump, and there are times in the film Forrest Gump where he was set back and never really gave up. And this problem was, he was really jilted by Jenny, wasn't he? And not to mention being marginalized for his disability. As I recall, this was a huge popular film at the time, and a lot of times at the church, sometimes a film would come out and then immediately a lot of people would watch it and we would become very latched on to it, and it'd become like the big popular thing. And Forrest Gump was pretty popular at the time. As I recall, one of the senior pastors did a message on it talking about how when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. I don't really think that's the real meat of the message of Forrest Gump, the movie, if you really want to get down to it. That is an important factor to it. And you could say that the story of Forrest Gump is sort of the realization of the American dream and how anyone can succeed if they just try a little. And in the case of Forrest, his little contributions, such as helping Elvis become a star by showing him how to dance or something like that, and then how he was there to just with Watergate. Very little effort was done on Forrest's part. In fact, he didn't even mean to do these things. He just kind of did them. As far as the idea of Forrest Gump in this particular thing that you just saw, someone just sort of gave me that idea. I don't even remember who. I think it was maybe the team met, and they just said like, and there were ideas that happened that I never came up with. The team would just come up to me and say, hey, we want to do an idea like this. And then I would try and sometimes that idea was like really dumb. And I think there's one skit you can watch that was given to me that I really tried to do my best with, but it was just so dumb that I just, Anyway, yeah, I didn't even post it on here, so anyway, so this one sketch about Forrest Gump, I like that idea. I like this idea because we've all felt that life sometimes just works against us so many times. This nation, this whole United States, this whole world just is not set up in a way that everyone can win. And I think we know this. And there's the winners, they win a lot, and the losers lose a lot too. Such is the nature of capitalism. But I don't really want to get into that. I just like the idea of this sketch, okay? I think it's important to keep a positive attitude if you want to do something you like. I mean, hey, you're not guaranteed a reward, but you can have some failure if you can have all the failure you want if you just give up. Anyway, so I think I like seeing Forrest encourage Carl Lewis, Bruce Springsteen, and Bill Gates that they should do what they do. It's a positive message, and it's a bit oversimplified, but hey, it's kind of what I do. I mean, I did these skits, and I didn't really get a lot of reward from them, but hey. So now when it comes to messages, this one really focuses on prayer. Big in Christian circles, so I'm told. Okay, really quick, this is Mark. I wrote these sketches about 25, 30 years ago for a college-age group, and they were taped. They're on a YouTube site known as CCF 90 Skits Nostalgia. You can watch it there if you want to watch over the commentary. There's a lot of evangelical stuff here, and a lot of stuff here about prayer.
I don't know.
And just to give you a precedent, before this sketch, we did the scene where Pastor Phil, who was always the main speaker there, usually the main speaker, was taken away, and I didn't get the footage of this, but yeah, he's basically was taken away, and then this guy had to come on here and awkwardly do this thing where they actually pray for Pastor Phil, and this is a fake prayer, so I don't know, this feels kind of wrong to do, because we all know that it was a staged thing with these fake terrorists kidnapping Pastor Phil and stuff like that. Anyway, so you may have noticed from the beginning, this is James Bond. This is a James Bond parody. I made that little thing with, like, I don't know, some sort of Windows Paint program, that logo there, that didn't really transition very well. They finally got it up there. There's a lot of technical issues with this thing, this particular one. But actually, a lot of it turned out okay. Now I think we have an issue with, yeah, we were doing a skit. There's going to be a really awkward pause here. Funny story, the actor that was playing James Bond here, oh, looks like I cut that part out.
James,
yeah, anyway, it actually took like 2 minutes before he actually showed up on stage, because he was in some sort of dance number before this. And yeah, so it was really awkward. Kind of
you sound different.
Oh, man.
Really?
So yeah.
Well,
okay, so this guy who's playing James Bond, I mean...
And you haven't flirted with me once.
Okay, let me see. What year would have this have been?
Older,
maybe 96? So, okay, so the Pierce Brosnan GoldenEye film probably would have been out. So, I guess he's not trying to do an impersonation of Pierce Brosnan, but he's... I think he's really imitating the Sean Connery accent, which Sean Connery I don't think ever really had when he was James Bond. If you watch those old James Bond films with Sean Connery, he doesn't talk like usually Sean Connery talked. But anyway, so oh yeah, and then we really have Q here. Honestly, I love the guy who's playing Q. He's doing this accent that is just insane, and yet it works pretty well. So yeah.
Is this your lab, Q?
So the basic premise of this thing, I mean, if you've seen a James Bond film, you know the basic setup of whenever he goes to Q's lab, it's like he grabs some stuff. Stuff always comes in handy later on in the film,
This is so I can talk to God.
And so in this case, we're actually going to see him use this stuff. So it's always kind of a Chekhov's gun, really.
What's this, Q?
James, put that down!
Oh yeah, and then there's this thing. This is sort of a gun that is supposed to eliminate temptation.
Laser sighted. Temptation. Eliminator.
Sorry, the cringe is just starting to... Now, I can't believe what happens here. Basically, in the script, it says that he knocks the head off a dummy, and we actually have a dummy behind there. And here's the thing, and it has like a balloon on its head. I don't know if you can see it, because unfortunately the video didn't really capture this very well. But
let's say number 4.
Yeah.
Put that target up over there.
Yeah, there's a target there. So okay, so this, and there's like a balloon on his head. And yeah, it
Let's
took
pretend
way
that
too
dog
long
over there is
to set up this thing
temptation in
in
your
the
life.
sketch, and that just gets really,
Lust, for example.
yeah, no, it gets really awkward.
In the name of Jesus,
This
I
is,
rebuke
yeah.
you, temptation.
And that actually worked. I can't believe that he got that. I mean, we only had one take on that because it's a play, and he did it.
That's amazing, Q.
I was so surprised. I thought he was going to miss or something, and honestly, I don't think we had a backup plan for what if he had missed. He just kind of got the shot. And I think that's some sort of like Nerf bow and arrow with like a spike or a big needle at the end, so that was probably kind of dangerous. He could have, I mean, you could literally put out an eye with that thing.
They put these things on the
yeah.
Joshua's trumpets as they marched around the city of
So
Judah.
yeah, so that's kind of the thing.
With their
So
shouts of victory, God's
now, if you
power
know
reigned
anything
mightily.
about Christian culture, they love that prayer. They love to talk about how much that prayer can knock down mountains and stuff like that.
use these
And so I guess what we decided to do is a lot of Christian people talk about how they like to weaponize prayer. So in this case, we actually have prayer
Let me
weapons.
give you another demonstration.
Crazy stuff. Oh yeah, then we have this actor here playing like
Let's
this
pretend
strange angel that you can
dummy over there
shoot.
Is an evil someone,
I think.
a bad principality.
Oh man, that is just conveying a lot
Go
of
ahead.
just
Aim.
untrue stuff. But
Jesus.
they didn't flag me on it, so
In your name, I rebuke
meant
this
that.
evil. Now, fire.
No, we actually have a sound effect for that. Yeah.
That's pretty incredible, Q. Good job.
I can't remember if we did that sound effect, like if the gun is actually making that sound, or if generally, because usually when I was doing these sketches, I was up in the sound booth.
No, James.
Kind of giving orders to like the sound man as far as when to do the sounds and stuff. Oh, the coffee joke. I can't believe it. I was so surprised that worked out.
Urgent message.
That was not in the script, and I think
came in and
I felt like it was kind of
kidnapped
ad lib there.
Right
and
out of CCF.
so, oh, that's funny.
Someone needs to do something now.
Okay, and then we cut to this video here,
Here we have Pastor Vic.
and
Are not met.
oh boy, this is me with the stuffed cat, and it's him with Pastor Phil holding him hostage. Okay, Yo Cream was something that was served in the back of the church, and I don't know, that was always just, so the fact they demand Yo Cream, that's crazy. I don't know, I always like the way that was delivered. Yo Cream, man, the swirl kind. That was just always hysterical.
Looks like I'm gonna need these.
No, yeah.
Pastor Phil's been kidnapped, and all prayer agents are on duty.
Well, if you're looking for some action in this sketch, you're not going to get it, because most of the sketch is just James Bond literally just praying and having the stuff solved for
How do
him.
these things work?
Oh, yeah. But I do like this one line where he just goes.
God, this is Bond, James Bond.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty funny.
I don't know if I can even pray.
Oh, well. The idea of James Bond being a repentant Christian, I think, is
gave me
just
just the line for
hysterical.
that.
So, I don't know. I hope you think of that's as funny as I do, but,
I pray for the release of Pastor Phil.
anyway, so yeah, the sketch is, yeah, you heard me yawning. The sketch is not as action-oriented as it probably should be. But, I kind of like this idea of, like, this angel sort of rescuing Pastor Phil here, and then taking out these bad guys. This is a strange style. I don't know why we have the... Okay, that's not really good. Coming up here is an effect where, yeah, so... Anyway, so this mustache guy's Pastor Phil. And that actually kind of transitioned pretty well. Now, this effect didn't really work really well. I was supposed to have the sound effect of... And I don't know what happened to that sound when we finally did it. Didn't get it recorded. Anyway, maybe you liked that, maybe you didn't. Who knows? Okay, this License to Pray one is just one of those sketches I like the more I watch it. It just suffers from the idea that, yeah, it does kind of suffer the idea that the Christians are the good guys, using the spy genre and stuff like that. I don't really, and nowadays most spy things, even the James Bond thing, have showed that James Bond just really isn't really that good of a guy. But I do like the idea of making a James Bond that repents of certain behaviors that I think I found very problematic as a Christian. I mean, the guy just slept with women like all the time and stuff like that. Not only that, he has a license to kill. How do you get that? you have to get like, I don't know, a learner's permit to kill first? Like if you kill someone, the cops will be like, hey, you can't do that. And he just kind of goes like, license to kill. And it's like, oh, I guess it's okay. You know, it's like, okay, enough of that bit. The thing about Christians is they are very big on prayer. And I think many of them are really missing the point, because I don't think what they want is prayer. I think what they, this idea that, hey, I mean, you pray and then God sort of helps you. And many of them will often interpret reality in such a way that fits that kind of narrative. Like, something bad has happened to me, and then I prayed, and then it turned around, and then good stuff happened. And then, but of course, there are times where they prayed, and then stuff got worse afterwards. I don't know what to do with that. In fact, you usually don't hear that point of view. I don't really think Christians want power. What I think they really want is magic. Like, they want prayers that are just answered. They want to be prayer warriors who just pray and they make stuff happen. You get a bunch of Christians together praying, and it becomes this kind of free-for-all show. It's like, oh, Jesus, we speak this, and they kind of do this kind of thing, and there's just a way you do it that's very similar to acting, honestly. So that type of prayer that you see that's depicted here, it's just simply not really true. If you read any book of the Bible, the holiest of characters are depicted in long-time type of praying, and some of them never get answered. I mean, really. And the problem is that Christians don't really want to face that idea of an answered prayer, given with all the evidence around them. And I'll concede that maybe God has a very specific agenda and doesn't want certain prayers answered. Again, this issue is very complicated. I'm not trying to say that God doesn't exist and you shouldn't pray, okay? I'm not trying to say that, but I'm saying, like, maybe we need to really think about how we're looking at this idea of prayer. Anyway, it's a complicated issue, and in part 4, it's going to get a bit more complicated as I try and deal with some other issues in the skits.